Hello, hello, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Bianca. Stop.
We should keep it.
Oh my god. This is the 5th time we have tried to do an intro. I don't know what is wrong with us today.
I think we just feel off because we're not in our usual setup, maybe.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of hyped.
Yeah.
Too.
It's been such a good day. But yeah, we are sitting on the floor of my empty room in my house, soon to be old house in Stillwater. So it's really funny. The setup is iconic.
I kind of like it though because it's so empty. It makes me feel like we kind of have like a real studio. Like we're not in my bedroom. Like, you know what I mean?
I don't feel that way.
Maybe this is your room and your stuff is still here.
I know. Well, I have a what is that thing called? A dresser thing. And what is that called? Vanity was the word I was looking for because it has like the and and then like my bed is just pushed in the middle of my room, and I don't know, I hate it. It's sad. I really love this house.
Yeah, it was nice.
I'm sad to leave. We lived here for a year together, and it's the end of an era.
It's the end of an era.
An era is described as a significant amount of time. If it wasn't significant for you, it was significant to me.
Don't worry, it was significant to me.
Okay, good,
I
I'm
really
glad.
do like it. It's funny because on the drive up here, I was telling Gianna, like, I never really thought I'd be back in Stillwater as much as I have been the past week because I was up here helping my friend, and now we're up here recording.
Yeah, our internet and power, everything went out at our house last night. There was a huge thunderstorm in Oklahoma and in Edmond. I didn't know what the weather was like around the state, but it seems like this weather is just going to be very rainy coming up for the next couple of weeks. So it rained, and it rained on me.
It certainly did rain on me. You know what? This thunder, though, was out of control. Seriously, I woke up this morning and I thought our house had been struck by lightning. It was at 5:30 in the morning, and I woke up to this shaking, like it shook my heart.
No, Bianca, and it's so funny because it was funny because I heard Mom get up, but I was too like shook to like move.
Yes.
But to give you all some context, so I've, been moving my stuff like back home, and I'm trying to like box up all my like reject art projects. And I'm like, hey Mom, like, you want this creepy ceramic thing I made that one time?
Gladys.
She's like, sure. But I have these little metal like outdoor sculpture things, and they're cute. Like I like them. I have them in my house, but they're meant to be outdoor sculptures. And so I had them in this box, but I'm just taking a lot of space up right now. And so I asked Mom, do you want me to put these little metal sculptures out in your garden? Because they're just kind of decorative. And she was like, yeah, sure. And then last night it felt like lightning struck right in front of my window. Underneath my window is where our garden is, and I was like shaking because I was like, oh my god, lightning like legit like struck down, hit my metal sculpture, and I was like, we're gonna die, like the house is set on fire. Like because like it was lightning, so I kept seeing all these flashes outside my window, and I was like, oh my god, like my art just has destroyed my home. And I was like freaking out for like a minute.
No, it's so funny because it woke me up and I was startled. It was the craziest thing. But then my fan was on last night and I realized that the fan went off. And so I was like, oh shit, we lost power. And then my phone wasn't fully charged either. And so I looked at it, I was like, crap, like, yeah, we definitely lost power. But it's funny because I knew that all of this was happening, but I couldn't get out of bed. Like I don't know if it's because I was too startled or shook, or I just didn't want to. Because I heard Mom get up. I was like, sorry.
Oh my god. Well, it all worked out. I had to come up to Stillwater today anyways to grab pretty much like I have like 5 things left here, and then we're good to go. But it worked out. So there's power here. So
there's power here.
We're making the best of it.
We are. I think it's working.
Yeah. It's fun.
So, I mean, you guys, you know what today is. And
if you don't know,
we can't
know
now. So I think the power went out last night because at 11 o'clock Central Time, Gianna and I sat in my bed and we played Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande's new song, Rain on Me, 50,000 times.
I think we broke the internet.
But then, I mean, the Lady Gaga gods sent this thunderstorm to our home. And it was meant to be.
It's the only logical explanation, because if you have not listened to this song yet, it is a fucking bop. And it's just so good. And the hype is just so good for Chromatic. I can't. It's another dance album. It's just going to be everything. Get ready, get hyped, because me and Bianca are at least going to do like 1 to 5 episodes analyzing this next coming album.
I love the song so much, and I love both of them. I mean, I love Ariana Grande, obviously, and I mean, of course, like, I'm literally wearing my Joanne Lady Gaga t-shirt right now.
Really fits the vibe.
It really does, and I need the Chromatica merch and the House Labs, the new Stupid Love palette.
Not that I can even compare us to those two goddesses, but I'm like, two Italian queens. Taking the world by storm.
By storm.
Literally. I just sound familiar.
I mean, Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, if you're listening, we just love you so much. And
my heart hurts.
So the song came out last night. Thunderstorm last night. Lost power. This morning, no power. Drive up to Stillwater. We get to Stillwater right when the music video was released. And the music video, we just watched it, so I'm sorry if this is sounding like so choppy, because we haven't done, a formal visual analysis of it yet, because we're too busy freaking out. And that will come for the Lady Gaga Chromatica episode. But the costumes, the dances, the aesthetic is just, because it's so different from Joanne. And I love Joanne so much. Like, Joanne vibes is everything.
Joanne was everything that I didn't know that I needed until it came out. And it was so funny, because if you are not a little monster, I think people kind of outside of that fandom were maybe a little bit confused, because we're like, oh, like, I don't know if that's what like Monsters wanted, but it was everything that Monsters needed and everything we didn't know that we needed.
And it came out in 2016, which was a time that I really, really needed Joanne.
Oh my God. I remember when we went to go vote, we were listening to Come to Mama, and we did a little video of it, and we posted it on Twitter. And I think, like, was it Gaga Daily or someone like retweeted us? That was fun. And then the day went to shit.
Well, but here we are, a new era. You know what? This album, Chromatica, was supposed to be released the day I was supposed to go on my trip to Japan. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was going to have like a 13-hour plane ride to like get hyped with this album. And obviously my trip got canceled, and the album got delayed, which I'm glad it did, because I mean, April, beginning of May was just, it's been rough. But next Friday, the full album releases, and I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm in a good space, and I need it. And next Friday, when the album comes out, Gianna, I think we should just like get really drunk and have a dance party in our house like Lady Gaga wanted, because she sent out a tweet this morning with the video. I'm going to find it.
She's calling all little monsters to basically have a rager in their homes.
You better wake up and get some coffee for that hangover, because the video is out. And when the album releases,
I would do anything that woman tells me to do. Like, it's insane.
And Ariana Grande, she said the sweetest tweet last night when the song dropped. She said, "One time, I met a woman who knew pain the same way I did, who cried as much as I did, drank as much wine as I did, ate as much pasta as I did, and whose heart was bigger than her whole body. She immediately felt like a sister to me."
It's just everything. We're so excited. And to just, I think, give a little sneak peek into what we think Chromatic will be and what the album will be like, it's Lady Gaga, I think, not even reinventing herself, but inventing herself in the way that she always wanted to in her earlier dance albums, but wasn't able to due to just so many factors. So it's not even reinventing. It's her, like, coming to her own identity that she's always wanted to shared. And I think in the construction and when we talk about post-human bodies, there's so much technology visuals on all the cover art that she's been sharing. So I think that is definitely going to be on the agenda moving forward. So
yeah,
get
for sure
excited because
I'm really
we
excited.
are fucking hyped.
I'm sorry if this, audio is just a spitting nonsense, but that's the way my brain feels right now. It is wonderful. And I feel like so happy because I have really good days and really bad days in the queue. And
this was a good day.
This was a good day and I really needed it.
Even though we're going to go back home and just like sit on the couch
with no power,
stare at each other. It's a good day.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
All right. Well, so, Bianca,
enough chit chat.
What are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to talk about you today.
Yay. I like talking about me. Oh my God.
So we had in our second episode kind of talked about my work a little bit, talked about my research on Judy Chicago. So I guess it's only fair that we talk about Gianna.
As an equal party in this business we have created together. Thank you for plugging me.
I got in trouble with Gianna yesterday. Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit, but at OSU, I, as an art history major in undergrad, wasn't really allowed, I guess, to take studio classes because a lot of them had prerequisites. So the only requirement for an art history major was, for me, intro to drawing, and that's the only studio class I took. And we put a question out on our Instagram about if anyone else in other art history programs were required to take studio classes. And a bunch of people responded, but they said maybe it was like one, or yes, they had to take studio classes, but they didn't really like it. And I think it's hard for art history majors because not all of us are artistically gifted. And I mean, art is to be taken seriously when you're in that type program. So I wonder if there's an option or a program out there where there's classes, like studio classes offered to art history majors that are at kind of a different level, like a survey or learning about the process. Because when I took a photography class, it was the history of photography, but learning about the different processes blew my mind. And frankly, I don't really understand how photography works still. It's just one of those things that my brain may never be able to understand. But even with Gianna, like when Gianna tells me about the printmaking process, there are so many different kinds, and it's hard for an art historian to write about those things without fully understanding all of the kind of back end work that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm a printmaker and I don't understand how printmaking works. Like, it's very technical process, and yeah, that's a really valid thought through your experience.
Because I just feel sometimes it's not fair. It's not fair for me to critique and complain about these processors or any kind of artistic making when you don't know what goes into it, you know?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So, Gianna, do you want to go ahead and start with talking about the structure of your program?
Yeah, for sure. So when I get into it and I kind of, it's going to be a very kind of long story short, summing up everything that happened in this program in like the span of 5 minutes. So bear with me. But I wanted to first address that essentially the BFA program at the Oklahoma State University is arguably smaller in comparison to other universities. So to give some context, OSU is generally an engineering and an agriculture school. If I'm not mistaken, they're the only college in the state that has a certified veterinarian program. Mm-hmm. So even though, yes, the program was smaller in comparison to other majors on campus, however, the art community in Stillwater is very extensive and very supportive. And this proved to be very helpful in networking scenarios, for example. And as I mentioned this because my involvement in the local artist community proved to be just as beneficial as my time in the studio program or in the classroom. And this was also recognized by my department. Mm-hmm. So this academic and community environment really intersected, and so much to the point where it really impacted my career over the course of this time. Mm-hmm. So in talking about this kind of community, local arts community environment, I worked things like taking advantage of arts festivals and showing at local galleries. We have one very prevalent gallery in Stillwater called Modella Art Gallery, and it's owned by a woman named Valerie Bloodgood, who I love, hold near and dear to my heart. She's absolutely wonderful. But her husband was affiliated with the university at one point in his career. And so even though Modella is not officially affiliated with the university, because they hold such this prevalent place in the community, faculty shows have been held there, student art shows have been held there. We worked with her exclusively with our capstone class.
Right.
And then of course I've just submitted to exhibitions that she's had there. It's really crazy how those kind of intersections came together, and showing there and at other places in Stillwater came to be just as important as anything else showing in the gallery on campus at the Gardner Art Gallery. So it wasn't one or the other, it was about doing both. And I think when you are in a smaller art program, again, Stillwater is a more rural area, those things prove to be really important. And I don't know, I can't say the same thing for other arts-based universities or other big programs. But I think just from my experience and talking about things on, you know, a smaller scale end, those are just my experiences. And I think that there can be some really great benefits in going to a smaller program. Just like with anything, there are going to be pros and cons of both. So for me, the pros were really about having this really beneficial networking, supportive environment, forming these really close personal and professional relationships with my professors. So that was really great. But on the other, you know, the flip side, I would say that some cons for me in going in a smaller program was I didn't have as much as an extensive training in figurative art like I would have liked to, now that I'm almost exclusively working with the figure in a sculptural sense. So at OSU, you only take figurative drawing 1, and in most other art programs you have figure 1, you have figure 2, you have figure 3. You can even go in and just take figurative studio and just work exclusively with the figure.
Right.
And that was not something that I had. I progressed and I learned so much just in that one class. I think all of us who haven't experienced working with the figure are so intimidated by it in the beginning, but having an environment where you are literally forced to work with the body, it's really hard in the beginning, but it was so worth it. I feel like, oh my God, like I can actually do this, and it's not as scary as we think it is. And so before bringing anything into a 3D realm, it's really important for me to first bring it into a 2D sense. Like it's really hard to just go straight into 3 dimension with not having any kind of 2D reference. And so I wish that I would have had more of a training in figurative work. Also, with that being said, a lot of other sculptural programs have figurative sculpture.
Oh, yeah.
And that was also not something that I got. So in working with the body, that was something that I really had to figure out how to do on my own. And I might talk about it in a little bit in this episode or further on down the line, but I went out and I found an internship working with a local artist, David Phelps, who is a great friend and mentor to me. And because of that internship, that is how I was able to work with the body. And I don't really attribute that work to my training at OSU. I attribute that work to my internship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like what you said about having pros and cons with different types of programs, because I just hate, even from my perspective, this like dismissal of something like getting an arts degree from Oklahoma State University. So I think it's really important just that.
Yeah. I formed so many great connections, and I think for any students in that area, please take advantage of what is there for you. There is so much more there than people think that there is.
Right.
And take advantage of that community, because it's so important, and they're amazing, and so many people have helped me get to where I am today. It's so lovely and beautiful to see everybody in that community support this podcast and share it. And
yeah,
you don't get that in a lot of other places.
Right.
So with that being said, that institution did so much for me, and I don't have any regrets going to that university. But just like with any program, I think I'm a pretty outspoken person. I do have a lot of thoughts, and there are always room to grow and expand and just always push to be better.
Yeah. I think that is another plus of OSU. I feel like they do a pretty decent job of encouraging kind of student ideas and thoughts and
Yes.
input.
Yes, and I will definitely be talking about that in a little bit.
So how far were you into the program when you really had to start narrowing down like your areas of interest, ideas for specialties, and what led you to pick those two mediums?
Yeah, so this is a excellent question because the answer is not one that I was ever formally given or was addressed by a professor or an advisor. For me, I was able to figure out when I needed to make a decision due to purely peer mentorship, which is extremely important. Peer mentorship is a whole other thing that I might talk about later on. I think it's extremely important and it's something I'm so passionate about. But I think that our program relied a little bit too heavily on student and peer mentorship to pass along essential and crucial information to other students. And I think at the time we relied on the seniors and juniors so much that it became this point of contention, I think, for the students. And we were all really feeling that. But so the answer for myself and most other students who are supposedly following these guidelines of, if you want to graduate in 4 years, we are structured in a 4-year program, you need to declare your primary medium somewhere around junior year, most likely like second semester of junior year. If I'm not mistaken, I kind of feel like all my years are blurring together a little bit.
That seems so late.
Yeah, it does. And with that being said, everybody is a little bit different because if you've taken AP art classes in high school, you could have gotten out of 2D foundations possibly. So you might have been able to put a little bit ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But somewhere around junior year, essentially. So again, for myself and many others at this time, you are straddling these lines between several different mediums right now. You know, you're kind of in between choosing between a couple different things. And many factors go into declaring a medium aside from like, well, I'm going to take this medium because I like it. It's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
For me, scheduling was a huge factor. Scheduling studio classes is a freaking nightmare. And I say that, it just is. It's the reality of it. Right. Studio classes in my program were primarily only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And also, for those of you who don't know, studio classes are always 3 hours long. And so you are trying to take, it's really recommended to only take 2 studio classes a semester. I've had to take 3 in one semester. Some people have taken 4. That's
mind-blowing.
That is mind-boggling. But yeah, so it's a little bit crazy. So I declared my primary, which was sculpture, and just being honest, I really just fell into it. It was simply, I had a really great time in 3D foundations, and I definitely could see and consider myself pursuing this medium. But also at the same time, I just had to make a choice, and I had the prereqs for sculpture because otherwise I wouldn't have graduated on time. And I say that it does not matter if you graduate in 3 years or 5 years or 6 years. You take however much time you need to if you have the ability to do that.
Right.
Graduating in 4 years means nothing. But our program has these specific timelines that it's nice to stick to as we go through this 4-year structure.
Right.
And so I did want to stick with that 4-year structure.
Also, 4-year structures are sometimes dependent on scholarships. So a lot of students like us who had, I think like they paid for your tuition in 4 or 5 years or until you completed a certain amount of hours or something, like that, like scheduling matters financially.
Right. So I hit that point where, again, if I wanted to graduate one time, I was past the point of being able to take other mediums. I never was able to take an oil painting class in college, which
That's wild.
It actually makes me a little bit sad. I don't, again, consider myself a painter, but it's something that I really like to do. Like I always sell kind of paintings for like my friends. It's very like a therapeutic process for me, and I enjoy doing it, but I wish that I would have had a more formal training in it. I didn't do 3D art up until college. I took AP art classes in high school, and it was always 2D, and that's when I worked with oil painting. And I can't remember, it was probably since high school where I worked with oil paints.
Yeah.
And then just up through college, like, you know, I just would do like fun mixed media, like acrylic, like collage stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So landing kind of or falling into sculpture, like you said, what are some of the difficulties of picking that medium in an undergraduate program like OSU's? And I know you have a lot of thoughts about being a female student in particular working in that type of male-dominated or perceived as such medium.
Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts.
She likes Snickers.
Sorry. So when I did decide to do sculpture at the time, it was not a difficult decision. I took 3D foundations. I had a great professor during that time. And I thought like, yeah, like I have just kind of fallen into this. Like it was a little bit nerve-wracking because I didn't have a background in 3D, but you know, I was like, let's do this. Like if this is something that I want to pursue, like now's the time because I'm not going to get this kind of space for a while.
Right.
So I had a great female professor. We had developed a great relationship, and it is, of course, fair to say that your relationship with your professor does affect what area you eventually settle in. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and I enrolled for another sculpture course, and it turned out that that professor was not going to be returning to OSU in the fall for my junior year, and they were going to bring in this new professor. And that ended up being the most difficult year of my academic career.
Yeah.
So from the beginning of this relationship and this classroom environment with this new professor, the vibe was just off from the beginning. I didn't know if it was me. I didn't know if it was him. I am not used to, I'm be honest, I'm kind of a goody two shoes. Like I'm not used to professors not liking me.
Right.
So I don't know. We just didn't vibe. And I'm like, okay, that was fine in the beginning, but I'm like, wait, like hold the phone, because then as I
hold the phone,
because as I'm talking to other students, other seniors, you know, ahead of me, they're saying, well, it really matters what medium you go into because that professor will become your mentor and they will help you form your ideas in your senior capstone show. And I was like, well, that's going to be an issue. It was my junior year where I started to really dive into talking about feminist themes and exploring feminist ideologies. And just in being completely honest, I didn't feel like that was an idea that was supported by this professor, which was really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just hard because maybe it was an idea that he liked, but he didn't know how to support me. And honestly, like when thinking about ideas conceptually, he had absolutely nothing to offer me.
Right.
And so it was really disheartening. It was really frustrating. But long story short, just this classroom environment was very toxic. It was very dysfunctional. I felt like I wasn't trusted with tools or machinery. Myself and my other female peers did not feel supported by him, and we did feel like it was because of our gender.
Yeah.
And that is just to say that is how we felt. That was my experience. I don't want to completely speak on behalf of my other peers at the time, but just in having conversations with them,
yeah,
we just didn't feel comfortable in this environment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, his complete just lack of confidence in me and my ability was just it's just extremely disheartening.
It's crazy because you and I grew up with a dad who worked in construction.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
no, not everybody grew up like that, but for you, it was wild when you were telling me about this. Like he didn't trust you with a power drill. Mm-hmm. And I could not understand what you're an art student. Like mm-hmm. technology and tools is part of being a studio major regardless of your medium. And the fact that he was unwilling to let you use some of these tools or didn't trust you alone with them.
Right.
Was crazy.
Well, and like you said, like I grew up with tools. Like our dad would have us be around him when he was working. We would help him like clean a shop. Like we were around like table saws and band saws, like all that stuff growing up. And so not that I ever like, again, extensively used that equipment during our childhood, but I wasn't ever nervous around power tools. And so that confidence is what helped me go into Sculpture One, because I felt like I did, like, you know, I still have to use these tools and learn, you know, the equipment and what's going on, but I'm not nervous to use them. And it wasn't until he came into the picture to where I felt so incredibly nervous and uncomfortable to use the wood shop or the metal shop because of him, because of the lack of confidence that I in turn had in myself.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty crazy year. That year also became the game of how do I make three-dimensional work without using power tools? And so I started working with found objects, which is really funny because found objects really paved the way for the work that I'm creating now. But it's really frustrating that it stemmed from this really like dark and dysfunctional place.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was really not at the level that I should have been at when I entered my senior year. Mm-hmm. This is all to say that during that time, I also sought mentorship elsewhere. It became extremely clear that my concerns were directly acknowledged and addressed, and I got the help and support that I needed in other places. But it was really hard having to go into milestones in my program, like my senior review. So essentially, in the program, you have to defend and present your ideas for your senior show, and you either pass or you fail. So you either like get to do it and go for it, or you have to keep going into this defense and keep trying to argue that like you should have the show, essentially. And the lowest score that I got, they give you, you know, kind of like a graded sheet, and the categories are, you know, your art, your research, your art historical knowledge, all that stuff. And my lowest score was on my art, my actual art. The only reason why I passed that review the first time was because I had strong research. My ideas were solid. My conceptual ideas really haven't changed that much since I first presented my review. What has changed the most is the work itself.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a mentor and a person that I could formulate those visual ideas with.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, though, that the best thing to have come out of this situation was me getting to work with the newest sculpture professor and my last professor in the program, the amazing, talented, beautiful Jessica Techmeyer. Jessica, you know that I love you, and I owe so much to this mentor of mine. She showed me the whole world of casting, which is what I predominantly use in my sculptures now, and I still have a lot to learn about it, but I wish that I would have had her from the beginning. And I truly feel like is the first professor that I ever had who has challenged me, who has pushed me, and I just didn't realize how easy I had it early on.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, like, in a lot of my classes, I did feel like I can get away with doing this project, and it's not going to matter right now.
Right.
And she just pushed me in so many wonderful ways that I'm just so forever grateful to her for. And that year, that senior year, was about playing catch up for all the shit that I had missed out on my junior year. She didn't deserve to like kind of be thrown into that mix and having to teach us things that she thought that we already knew. But she did an incomparable job and is just absolutely incredible and will do incredible things for that program.
Yeah, I mean, I could really, this past year, see you struggle with that, like feeling like you were behind, but also feeling like someone is really pushing you for the first time. And I could tell where it seemed like you were struggling with being pushed, but it's just because, it's not because it was a bad thing, it's just because you hadn't been really challenged like that before.
Yeah, for sure.
So what about printmaking? You also have another focus.
Yes. So, printmaking, I ended up, I'll say printmaking ended up being a really natural fit for me because it allowed for interdisciplinary practices. So in my program, you declare a primary medium and a secondary medium. And this is to say that in your senior show, you can really show whatever you want. At the end of the day, like, I was sculpture and printmaking, but if for some reason I felt like I could make photography, then I could put photographs up on that wall and it would have been fine. That's not necessarily what they have in mind, but I will say they're very flexible in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, my secondary medium ended up being printmaking, and I chose this because printmaking is very sculptural and it's very technical.
Right.
I had found this approach to 2D also just really satisfying at the same time. And for me, again, I was straddling this line between ceramics and print. And it also came down to, my decision in choosing one of those mediums was thinking about my future in the long term. I feel like ceramic studios are a lot more accessible outside of an academic setting. Mm-hmm. And if that was a skill and a craft that I wanted to learn in the future, I felt like I could more easily pick up ceramics than I could printmaking. Mm-hmm. The experiences that I had in printmaking were so extremely valuable, working one-on-one with such an incredibly accomplished printmaker that I don't feel like I could have gotten that experience anywhere else. So I really wanted to take advantage of that formal training in an area that is oddly highly revered, but also at the same time I feel is very underappreciated.
Absolutely. Because I think it's people don't understand it. I don't understand printmaking. Exactly. I know what it is. Like every time I write something up, I'm like writing an article or like studying something, I'm like print. Okay. Print. I don't, when I read the word print, it's hard for someone who hasn't seen the meticulous technologies behind it and behind the different kinds of print processes enough to understand that and really grasp the amount of intense hard work it takes to do that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think it's funny when we talk about different kind of accomplished like contemporary artists.
Right.
We think of like Kiki Smith or I don't know, just other artists. They always have the title of like kind of like printmaker down there. And it's like becomes this very like revered term, but it's like, okay, what is printmaking? What does that actually mean?
Do you think Kiki Smith is a printmaker? I would actually not originally think of her as a printmaker, but she works at ULAE so much.
That's the thing is printmaking also has this other connotation in the art world because you can make a drawing, but a lot of artists, they're not doing that printing by themselves. They take their image and they get it sent to a prestigious printing institution and those people make it for them. But when you look at Kiki Smith, like she is a paper interdisciplinary artist. She is a printmaker and she is a sculptor. And I think that she does have a background in printmaking and has created her own prints.
No, of course.
But it's very interesting. And it's this kind of, again, like insider knowledge in the art world.
Right. That's really interesting because her focus on paper is fascinating because I just think of her as more of a sculptor, especially like her bronze, like Lilith and things like that.
Yeah.
That's actually really interesting just thinking about the medium of paper because I just was working on that little article for Art Focus about 24 works on paper. Mm-hmm. So that's funny. This past week, I've really been thinking about the medium, what it means to work on paper so much.
Well, and again, I think that I don't think that is something that is undervalued, just working on paper. But for me, that's where print making became so extremely satisfying as I was really encouraged to get experimental with it. And I did a lot of interactive installation work. I'll probably be putting pictures on the Instagram of some of my images, but I have this one piece about the consumption of birth control, and I printed these cards, and people could basically choose which information they chose to consume, and they got to take this card and this knowledge with them when they left.
I love that piece, Gianna. I think it's brilliant, and I also think it's so prevalent in terms of kind of text and image and reading these protest signs and things like that. Like the text that we consume as visual art is just, I love it. Well, I love it.
And I'll get into that a little bit when I talk about the differences between my sculptural work and my print work, but my printed images are definitely more heavily rooted in the history of feminist protest art.
Yeah, I dig it.
Thanks.
So you mentioned Kiki Smith a little bit. What are some of the other kind of artists that inspire you? I think it's so fascinating that Kiki is a sculptor and printmaker and seems very similar to your work.
What do you know? I feel like I'm imagining one professor, if he's listening to this right now, just like laughing at me because he knows how much I just like worship the ground this woman walks on. She's crazy and I love her. But
do you remember when we met Kiki
do you
Smith?
remember when we met her? That was the day before my birthday. And then on my birthday, she was giving a talk at OU.
It was so fun.
That was such a great day. Everyone was like, what are you doing for your birthday? And I was like, I'm going to a conference. Hey. It was a fantastic day. But yeah, at the OSU Museum of Art, we actually had a Kiki Smith show called The Body, the Muse, the Spirit. And
thank you, ULAE.
Thank you, ULAE.
Bill Goldston.
They are a printmaking program on Long Island, and our university has a very strong connection with them. We have an internship program with them, and we get a lot of printmakers coming in, and we're able to show their works at the museum because of this connection. So yes, Kiki is definitely on my list. Her ability to juxtapose the confrontational and the beautiful in relationship to our internal human anatomy and also external human anatomy is something I'm so intrigued by. It's like dark and creepy and beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah.
I'd say another artist who I mentioned earlier on, David Altmage, he was introduced to me this year, and his exploration of the body and using plaster is something that I really enjoy. And also creating art from a queer lens or just a more open lens, I really enjoy. Some of my affinity artists who, if you're in the program, you're familiar with this term. When you present your whole binder and your paperwork, when you are presenting your final show, you have to literally type out and write which artists have like impacted your artwork, and you have to talk about their work in relationship to yours. Another one that I have is Louise Nevelson. She is most well known for her work that can be described as large scale monochromatic sculptures compiled from found mostly wooden objects. I find her method of assemblage and use of found objects very successful and practical. And then when taking that in consideration with the theme with human interaction within the natural and unnatural world, that is something that I really dive into with my work. Although my work is figurative, hers is not. But same concepts, just approaching it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot more, but
right.
A lot more.
Should we talk a little bit, sorry I keep saying a little bit, more about your work, the concepts, and I love how your prints and your casting relates to one another. And like humble brag, but I have a print of myself, of the sculpture that Gianna made of me, and it's pink. And it's perfect. It's perfect. I love it.
Well, I love it too. And thanks for always modeling for me, because
well,
I feel like I have this like model on hand. I'm like, hey, like, sorry. Hey. I'm like, hey, what are you doing today? Can I just like cast your body really quick? It'll just take a minute.
I just more appreciate the fact that you made the print pink.
Whatever works for you,
it's so pretty. Like, it's so pretty. When I'm just like, when I see my body in a print and it looks just the way I envision it in my head, I'm eternally grateful.
Well, I appreciate you and so glad you like it.
I love it. Thank you.
It was so funny because when I made these prints, Bianca was like, oh my God, like, can I have one? And I was completely joking, but you went off on me, and I was like, you can buy it with a friends and family discount, and you were like, bitch, that's my body.
I think I just deserve one. I want to support you. I want to support your art. When this podcast blows up, I will buy every single piece of yours for over market value.
Wow, thanks. Number one supporter.
But when you made it, I don't know that I had a job yet. And so I just really needed something good.
Oh, that's right. Well, it's fine. Happy to give it to you.
Thank you.
It is your body. You're right. So I'm happy to give it to you. And actually...
And it's a print. You can make more than one, right?
And it's a print. No, totally. Because I modeled for my professor, Mark Sisson, who did this political piece in light of the Trump administration, and so he had me stand in as this like reporter girl, and I'm like, oh yes. And he likes choosing models who also fit these like themes that he's talking about. And he was like, Gianna, you're an outspoken individual. Would you stand in to be this reporter woman? And I'm like, sure. But he gave me one of his prints because I modeled for him, and I just like, I cry. It's just
so sweet.
It's everything. It's gorgeous and way better than mine. So it's something that I think is really great that you can do with prints, since you can make so many.
I think in another life you would be a really great reporter. You are a very outspoken individual, I must say.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
I would be banned from the what is it?
The daily press
The
conference.
daily press conference. Hey! Oh my god. I don't like you.
Oh my god.
I would be very biased, I think.
I think so.
So that would be my
Maybe not good.
only fault.
Okay, so let's talk about your work.
Yeah, so throughout my prints and my sculptures, I tackle the same themes in which I generally address contemporary female experiences within a consumerist culture. And I do this by using, you guessed it, a mother-loving, intersectional feminist lens.
Hey.
Hey. But the way in which I approach these topics is also very different based on the medium that I'm using. Mm-hmm. So within my sculptures, I usually, and well, at least right now, extensively only use the female body as my primary method of communication between myself and the viewer. So I manipulate the body in a manner that exposes the reality that women are consistently being exposed to hazardous, harmful, and toxic products, both medically and commercially. So over my work in both prints and sculptures, I allow for these conversations to be taken place on how women are a driving force of our market system, because the market is specifically profiting off the way that we expect women to operate within society and how our bodies are simply functioning biologically. Mm-hmm. So again, even though I'm using the same lens, I mix up how I'm displaying this information, because not everybody absorbs art in the same way. And that is a consciousness that I am, I use as a tool. And it's extremely important to me that I understand and my viewers understand that it's okay if you don't understand this aspect of what I'm showing you. Mm-hmm. I'm just asking you to maybe gravitate towards something you can connect to. So I like to give a range and a lot of different options, even if that's not necessarily how I might connect to it. Mm-hmm. I'm very much okay with different interpretations, because for me, it's about allowing for this conversation.
Yeah.
And this consumption of knowledge. So my sculptures have a certain level of ambiguity to them, I would say, but in my prints, my messages are really more direct. Mm-hmm. I'm able to incorporate text and make more, again, like interactive pieces, like that birth control piece I mentioned, and which people have the choice to say if they want to receive this information or not.
Right.
But yeah, and the print that Bianca's talking about, so I did, my first body cast I ever did was of Bianca. And then I took that cast and I brought it into a two-dimensional sense and I did a print of it. The way that I showed the body and the way that I used colors was extremely different from the way that I presented it as a sculpture. In my 3D work, I don't use color as of now. Mm-hmm. I think, especially when talking about the body, just a lack of color also allows for more interpretations.
Yeah.
As of right now, just like the work that I've created. Mm-hmm. But within my prints, I use a very bright and vivid color palette.
Yes.
And I am really attracted to just very like feminist, like contemporary art that we see again throughout the rise of the Me Too movement and contemporary feminist protest art. But I'm just really drawn to those colors. And the thing that I enjoy about my prints, aside from my sculptures, is that I think it's okay to talk about feminism in a really like fun and interesting way, and it doesn't always have to be so serious all the time.
Right.
Some of my prints are very serious. Like I have the luxury tax print called Not a Luxury, Stop Taxing My Vagina, which talks about the pink tax and all that stuff. But the body casted print I use pink, I more use like blues and grays, and it's monochromatic, but it's pink, red, and white, and then like a grayscale.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun, and I just think it's a different way to talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
as a female and as a person who consumes things that are admittedly also toxic for my body, like dyeing my hair and using nail polish, makeup, like so many things that I can dive into a lot. It's not about being hypocritical. It's just about being aware. And I just want people to connect with this reality in different ways.
Yeah, I love that about your work. I think it's so important that it's not a statement that makes other women feel bad, because you and I wear makeup and we like dressing up and we like shopping, or, you know, we like doing all these things that seem kind of anti-feminist or bad for our bodies, but it's just that awareness that you bring to it. Right. Is so wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think too, it was really interesting when I especially was talking about menstruation, and I was talking about the pink tax, and I had a lot of, you know, people tell me, oh, why don't you talk about other women, you know, in other countries not even being able to have pads, or they're like shamed for being on their periods and all this stuff. And I'm like, you are right.
100%.
Those are very serious issues that happen elsewhere in the world. And I'm extremely interested in those topical issues. But as a student who, this is my first attempt at creating a feminist body of work, it was extremely important to me to talk about issues that had affected me and the state and the country that I live in.
Yeah.
It was really hard in the beginning that you want me to talk about an experience as an outsider that I really don't know that much about. If I had more people I could interview and talk to, and research is so important to me in my process, I didn't feel like as of now that was a topic that I could display in a correct and fair manner.
And you know what? Even starting with something like the chemicals that exist within a tampon, the chemicals that you put into your body with all these products, that's just a starting point to talk about all these other issues that are extremely important and extremely valid. And who's to say we can't use your work to talk about those? Like, why can't it be a starting point? And you're what, 23?
I know. I'm like, Jesus, like, I'm not trying to break down the glass ceiling, like, just with this one work. Like, I'm just, again, just trying to expose this knowledge.
And you have your whole life. And I think that's something that, you know, will come with grad school or different processes or different series that you want to do.
Right, exactly. And I love what you said, because for me, when talking about something so simple as like a menstruation device or a tampon, breaking down that object and really talking about its chemical makeup, talking about artificial fragrances, talking about parabens, talking about all these chemicals that over time are slowly affecting your reproductive health. And birth control is also something that I find so interesting, because there are obviously a number of birth control devices for women are on the market, and there's only one for men, two if you count a vasectomy. But I have issues with the way that birth control is consumed, because again, it's only directly affecting the health of women. You should not be on any medication for the majority of your life, and that in turn will have negative health effects. I started birth control very young when I was in high school, because I had cysts on my ovaries, and then that was great, and that was a medication that helped with that, and then I stopped that, and then wanting to get back on it in college, and I love my birth control. I'm so happy that I have access to it. But I would be lying if I wouldn't say that I am already thinking about the ways that that medication is going to be affecting my body in the future.
Yeah, and I think what your work does is take these things that we take for granted. You know, a lot of people, well, there are people who are fortunate enough to have access to different kinds of birth control. And that's something that seems so regular for a lot of people. But the fact that it's hurting your body over time is something that's not discussed. And with tampons, and I mean, I think all of these relate to things like the prison system and class and social structures. Like having chemical-based tampons or feminine products, that is a classist structure.
It is, because in college, like, I couldn't always afford organic tampons.
No.
So it's And it's really hard for me as a person who's making this work and like essentially, maybe like preaching this stuff. But it's like, yeah, I'm not saying like don't buy the cheap pads, because like I myself have to buy cheap pads, but you deserve to know what you're putting in your body. And the way that menstrual devices are packaged and put on the shelf, they don't have to disclose those chemicals on the packaging.
Right.
And so you have to go and outsource this information in different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you. I think you're doing amazing things. And I'm really excited to see what you do next. So have you thought about kind of the next steps? Like, are you going to keep up with body casting? I know you said, like, there's still so much more to body casting than you've even experienced. But...
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. The last body cast that I just did was the first time I had created seam lines by myself, which is extremely challenging. So the thing with body casting is also it's really hard to do it by yourself. If you're going to do something so in the round, you really need at least 2 more pairs of hands because the sooner you get it off the model, the better. I love my models. If you've modeled for me, thank you so much. I absolutely adore you. But I kind of put y'all through the rigmarole. Like, I do really like these interesting perspectives and compositions. And so I might have you all get into an interesting pose that you might not be able to hold for that long.
Right.
So it's important to have, more people on. Yeah, so I do think that I will continue with body casting. There's so much more to explore through this transitional time that I'm finding myself in. I am very fortunate that I will have a space that I can possibly create these casted body sculptures on our mom's property. Our dad had his own business, so we have a pretty good wood shop set up at home. And also the artist that I worked with last summer, he of course has his studio in Oklahoma City, and I might be popping down there from time to time and still asking him, for help and assistance. Sorry, David, I love you, and you can't get rid of me. I think there's a lot left to explore. Like I said, I haven't worked with the male body, but I think that could be really interesting in the future to do sort of a compare and contrast situation visually. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot left to explore. I would like to maybe try to do something that's completely in the round, which I haven't done yet. So I think a lot left to explore. I find the work extremely satisfying, and I finally feel like I'm making something that really means something and that looks good and that is worth it.
Right.
And, aside from my prints, I think this is the most impressive work that I've created.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything else you want to share about your work, your process?
Oh, well, I'm sure that there is, but, later down the line, I might do a deeper visual analysis of some of my work.
Yeah.
But
well, I think it would be cool to also kind of compare some of your pieces like to Kiki or to other of your inspirations.
Yes, I would love that. That's a really good idea. We will be doing that. There's a lot of things left unsaid, but I owe a lot to my institution, and I love my professors who helped me create this body of work, and to my mentors also outside of OSU. You know who you are, and in sculpture, you cannot do it alone, at least to the scale that I am really wanting to make work at. You just can't. And I also really thrive in a collaborative environment. I really like working with other people. It pushes me to be better. And I love being in a studio space with other people, because being by yourself and just by yourself in art is just like, it's not for me. I like working with other people in a studio dynamic. I thrive off of it.
You know what? I think you're the next Judy Chicago.
Oh, God. Judy.
Working in a studio with other ladies, just making art.
Yeah. Well, and it's exciting too. I also formed such a wonderful relationship with the women in my capstone group.
Yeah.
I graduated with a lot of women, and so fortunate for it. And because of coronavirus, my BFA capstone show wasn't able to really happen. It was up for a week, but I, didn't give my artist talk and all that other stuff, which was okay. we cried about it, and now we're done. You know, it is what it is. But because the goal of having a capstone show is because now you have this body of artwork that you have and you can put out into the world, and now you have something ready to go to submit for other exhibitions. So I've been talking to some other lovely ladies in my capstone group and possibly curating our own shows in the future once everything starts to open back up. So I think there are exciting things to look forward to, and I'm sure there will be some opportunities for you all to come see my work in person.
Yeah. So where can everyone see your artwork, Gianna?
Yeah, so I have an artist Instagram, Gianna Martucci Fink Art. Horribly long, I apologize. And then I also have my website, Gianna Martucci Fink Art, too. And then my personal Instagram is La Vida de Gianna, and I post a lot of art things on there as well. So yeah, you can always find me on any of those. And also my contact information is linked on our Art Pop Talk website as well.
Sweet. Any last minute thoughts for today?
Thanks for letting me talk about some intersectional feminist art.
Oh, you know, that's what we do on this show.
That's what we do.
Yeah. So everyone, I mean, you're listening to this on Tuesday and we are recording on Friday. So if you haven't listened to Rain on Me over the course of these next 4 days, please do it. Please get pumped for this coming Friday, the drop of Lady Gaga 6, because we will be, you know, posting about it nonstop. So I hope you're excited.
And even if you're not, oh well, because that's what we're giving you. That is the content that we will be serving you today.
So you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on all the social platforms. So make sure you tell your friends to follow us. And thanks so much for listening, guys. We really appreciate you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.